Hello, and welcome to Book to Podcast from AudioBite, all about raising online profiles and presence of published and soon-to-be-published authors. In the next half hour or so, you'll have an intimate introduction to the author and their book. For more details, please visit audio-bite.co.uk. And now, here's your host, Viva Yulu.
On today's Book to Podcast, I'm with Marina Pearson. She's the author of Goodbye, Mr. X. Marina is also the founder of Divorce Shift, an organization that supports women who are struggling to get over their ex relationships with interactive online workshops. She has created a community of women so they can express, release and move on in the comfort of their own home. Marina has been featured in the Daily Mail, The Guardian and on various women's magazines discussing matters of divorce and her journey. So, welcome to Book to Podcast.
Hi there, Viv. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. So how did you come to write this book?
Well, it was in me for quite a long time, and I just felt last year that it just needed to come out. So my own experience has really been the journey of my healing, really, from divorce until now. It really, for me, was an opportunity to focus on what I had learned along the way, what I work with and teach with my clients. But ultimately, I felt that it was really important because I know a lot of women now who come to me and who've been struggling to get over their ex-relationships for about 3 years and, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, even 10 years down the line that they really have never let go. So before I kind of went into the space, I realised that I always found it very, very tough to let go. And I couldn't understand why there were certain women that could let go much, much easier than what, than what I'd been through. So in the end, I decided that after a breakup about 2 years ago now, I used the tools and the techniques that I'd learned along the way. And in 6 weeks, I was up and at 'em and moving on. So, and a few months later, I met my partner, and I'm getting married in June. So,
really?
yes.
Nice.
So there was something really in it. I found that the steps that I'd taken had made a profound difference on me, but also had made a profound difference in terms of me finally finding the partner that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. So it was very interesting in that sense, and therefore I knew that I wanted to work with women in this arena because what I had to offer was something that was extremely valuable, not only to them, but also to their children, and if and when they had them, but also to their next relationship, really, because in order to really be present in the new relationship that you're in order to actually attract that new relationship that you really, really want, and in order to be really, really happy with yourself, I think it's so important to follow the steps and move on and do the work, actually.
Yeah, I think doing the work is the most important. It's almost like a gift to yourself.
Yes, it is. And this is a really interesting conundrum here, Viv, because what I've noticed, having spoken to lots of women, is that there's a sense that they don't deserve it. There's an underlying belief that stops them actually from having the from asking, hey, can I explore this opportunity with you? And it's been really interesting for me to observe because it all comes down to what you value, how you value yourself, and whether or not you want to gift that to yourself, actually. But I believe that in order for us to live bigger, be bigger as a woman, it always starts with ourselves, and feeling like we do deserve to do the work is really, really key. Yeah. So that's why I think the first chapter of the book I talk about commitment.
Yes, so let's dive right in, because in this chapter 1, you're focusing on women who've gone through a heartbreak, but they're too scared to take the plunge to change themselves. And you also mention 8 fears that stop them from committing to the process of healing themselves.
Yeah, so what I've noticed is that when we're not really committed, we stay in this limbo. Will I or won't I? Or we stay just stuck, effectively, which is why, I have women coming to me after 3 years and they're still not over their ex, right? So what stopped them? That was the really big question for me. What has actually stopped them going off and finding the information that they needed or the resources that they needed in order to actually have that sorted? I'm very practical in that sense. If I got a problem, I want to solve it.
Yeah.
That's kind of like masculine talking. I'm forever seeking solutions to what I believe are my challenges. So I was really finding it very, very hard to understand what stops us from committing. So there are 8 fears. And, there's the fear that there are a couple of them which I
just mentioned
want to mention. Yeah. So the ones that I find the most interesting are this fear of not being right, of actually making the other person right, but actually letting go. Because if we let go, then there is the idea that we're going to make the other person right. They kind of have won somehow. I have a lot of women come to me who are very angry and they don't want to let go because they feel if they do, that he's won. Because I want you to do something right now.
Okay.
I want you to grab your fist.
Yes.
And I want you to stomp your foot and say, I'm right. I'm right. How did that feel?
Felt great.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't it make you feel that you've got the power?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's interesting about this is just that it's a delusion, because in fact what happens is that even though we feel like we have the power, we are giving our power away to the other person, because they're constantly on our mind, they're constantly pushing our buttons. We're not free, right? So it's a really, really important point, and I think a lot of the time if we feel that we're winning, we feel that we've got the power. So I would say that the number one is the fear of losing. Another one I see a lot is actually the fear of being on your own. Sometimes it's a lot easier to keep rehashing the past than it is to actually finally confront the fact that you need to move on in order for you to be alone and so forth.
Yeah.
Because if you're consumed by the thoughts and the drama and everything else, you don't have to really face the fact that you are alone. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So
Absolutely.
the attachment to your past effectively keeps you feeling that you are attached to something.
Yes.
Or someone. Therefore, you're not alone.
I would think that these fears are sort of traits that we haven't quite gotten over our ex.
Very much so. So you're not over him because he still consumes you. You're still obsessed. You have reoccurring thoughts of wanting to kill him, usually.
Not in the literal sense.
No.
Sometimes.
And I've basically realised that there are 3 stages. There's the yo-yo stage, which I call the yo-yo stage, which is like a yo-yo. You come up and down, up and down, up and down. You don't even know whether you're coming or going. You are pretty much like, I'm over here one moment, I am so in love with him, and the next moment you want to kill him. I'm so in love with him, the next moment you want to kill him. So you go from putting him up on a pedestal and then putting him in a pit, and you're not balanced. So it's really difficult for you to come to center and actually be present. So your mind is all over the place. That's when we stop eating. That's when we probably smoke and probably drink far too much. And we just go out and just want to let it all out.
Self-destruct in a way.
A little bit. And then the second stage is acceptance. So now we're in the stage of maybe 2 years down the line. You've accepted everything. But the problem with this stage is actually a very deceptive one, because you are kind of still in the place of, yeah, okay, I'm accepting everything. But the relationship between you and other is still difficult. Now, that's if you see them. Of course, if you don't, it could well be that you still have this idea that he did you wrong, or you can still have the idea that you did him wrong, but you're still not free. And finally, the gratitude stage, I think, is that when you can know that you're free of him. So the way I test this is if they can close their eyes and he walks into the room and all they need to say is, thank you, I love you. Thank you for everything that you gave me. If they can say that, then I know for sure that they're over him. Otherwise, there's still energetic ties to that particular person. And guess what? That will keep repeating the same cycle over and over again to the people that they attract. But also, what it will do is it may well not allow you to attract someone
who you deserve.
Who you deserve. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's really interesting. And there's an exercise at the end which helps people work out the why. And that's an important part of the process, would you say?
Exactly. So how to get over the fear? I mean, that's obviously an important question. And I believe that, there's a saying, I think it was Anthony Robbins that said this actually, if you know your why, the how will take care of themselves. And sometimes your why, your reason of why you want to step out of where you are, needs to be really compelling. So it could well be, and a lot of my women say to me, the reason why I want to move on is because I want to find a new partner, because I want to feel happy, because I want to feel like me again. We lose our confidence massively, and it has a complete knock to our self-esteem when we go through something like this. And we end up not even knowing who we are. I remember when I was going through my own divorce, oh my gosh, I smoked so much that my tongue went black. I was drinking so much I didn't know whether I was coming or going. And I would wake up every morning with a hangover. I could have sort of seen myself as an alcoholic at that point. But for me, what I realized was it was just I had no reason to let go. There wasn't even a conception of what that even meant. So when I realized that there was enough reason for me to want to let go, because I wanted to meet someone new, because I wanted to heal, because I wanted to feel better about myself, then I started making the different decisions in order for me to get to where I wanted to go.
I can see that. Yeah. No, seriously, I can see that. I can, just hearing you say it the way you said it now, it really makes sense. And I'm hoping that anybody listening to this would get it.
At the end of the day, what choice do you have? Do you stay where you are? Do you stay stuck? Because where you are right now may be really uncomfortable. And there's a sense that it's going to be more uncomfortable doing the work to get you out. But there's comfort in the discomfort. Yeah. I know this, right? Yeah. So fear of the unknown is another reason. But if we have a compelling enough why, then there's no problem.
Yeah. And in chapter 2, which I think is a bit, some people might find this controversial, you say, see your ex as a reflection of you. And you're really targeting women who stand in judgment of their exes, but they have something to do with it.
Yeah, this is like a really difficult part of the process. There's a lot of resistance that's met with this.
I can imagine.
Yeah, which is why commitment's really important, because I have to make rules around this. Is you're going to make him right, or you're going to be right, or you're going to be happy. You have a choice. We're always at choice, just depending on what we want. So we either want to make the other person wrong and us right, or we want to be happy. So I always kind of, if there's a resistance that comes up to this, which is completely normal, because there are beliefs around that particular thing that person is doing that I don't agree with, because it means that I have a belief around that particular thing that they've done. But I don't want to be that. So the hand goes out, I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not selfish. I'm not greedy. I don't betray. I don't do any of that. But the problem with this is that when we hold somebody else that's separate to us, we're not really fully engaging with the process of how we could really fully embrace ourselves. Now, there's been research that's been done over the last 10 years into the fact that we actually are all connected and that we are one. And it's very fascinating because we are, as Debbie Ford puts it, the microcosm of the macrocosm. Actually, I think it was Deepak Chopra that said that. So we are the universe, and which basically means that we are not separate from other. We all came from the same place. If we go back billions and billions of years, we exploded from this, big bang, as it were, but we all came from the same place. So if at the level of the soul, at the level of actually not seeing you in a body, me in a body, we are actually all one. And I think the biggest delusion that we are living on the planet right now is separateness, because it's not true. Even though I see you separate from me, there are many, many books written on this that show and illustrate that in actual fact we're not. So this is such a huge, huge, huge part to this. Now, if you can take that step, and when you do, gosh, the liberation of this is massive, because not only is it about you embracing that part of yourself, it's also about being able to stop comparing yourself to others, because if you can see the bad qualities in somebody, but also you can see the amazing qualities that other people have as part of you, how empowering would that be?
Yeah. Also, another thing about being a reflection of the ex is you've made that choice to be with that person. So there's something in you that identified with that person when you made that choice.
Sure. So there are 3 stages to when you meet somebody. There's the loved up stage, as I call it. the struggle stage, and then there's the mature stage. So the loved up stage is when we are loved up. It's like they've done tests on this actually, where basically meeting somebody new creates the same chemicals in the body than it is if you'd taken lines of cocaine. It's that you're on a high, psychedelic, beautiful colors, you feel amazing. Then maybe about 6 months in, you start seeing things you hadn't seen before. Maybe the drugs have worn off, and those things that you ultimately at the beginning really fell in love with is exactly the things that start bugging you. And finally what happens is, if you go into the struggle stage and you don't find a way to come out of it, that's usually when they become an ex. However, there is a different way, and it's to explore the struggle stage. And the struggle stage has so much juice in it, because what it allows you to do is to actually understand why you aren't actually really together. And I talk about this in the book, which is your disowned parts. We come together because basically we feel whole at the beginning, because that person expresses those qualities that we've kind of disowned as children. Now, this comes from being told that we shouldn't be loud, we should be polite, by our parents, right? Especially as women, be nice, be kind, be gentle. So usually if we have owned those qualities, but we have disowned the other qualities such as loud, angry, selfish, we tend to attract the opposite. Why? Because we automatically feel whole when we're with them. It's like a plus and a minus in terms of physics, right? A positive attracts a minus, and so forth and so on. So this is the same deal. And so what happens is that you feel whole when you first meet them, but then those exact pain points that you were told not to be show up in the other person. Now, you can struggle against it, or you can use it as an opportunity to heal.
I think that's really interesting, and it just moves us on to the next chapter, which is heal your conscious story. And one of the things I like about this chapter is you're referring to women who are trying to rehash their story. I guess the story of the pain. It's almost like a hamster going round in a wheel, trying to get sympathy. I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly, and the happiness. And I talk about this in a book called The Tractor Factor. So imagine, for example, a tractor goes into a field and keeps ploughing that same place over and over and over and over again. Keeps ploughing, keeps ploughing, keeps ploughing, keeps ploughing, and keeps furrowing, right? And it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Well, our mind is exactly the same. We have so many connectors in our brain that are neural pathways that connect one thing to another. So we make sense of the world through these neural pathways. But our mind is so neuroplasticity, it's called. It's so plastic. It can bend and morph and change and so forth and so on. So things like neurolinguistic programming are fabulous for this sort of thing, because the problem is, if you're ploughing the same field, you're going to have the same thoughts over and over and over and over again. The more entrenched you are, the less likely it is you're going to be able to get yourself out. So in this case, you have to challenge your story, because just like the farmer who wants to go and plough another field and create a different groove, he also needs help. He needs to get out of that field and go and plough another one. So, how does a farmer do this? Well, maybe he has a new GPS system. Maybe he has a look at a map and goes, right, where is the next field that I can go and plough? Because this one's already done. I need to go and plough another one. So off he goes, and he finds another field that he can plough. Well, the same is true of your story. But the GPS system for your story is going to be the questions you ask. So there's always a balance in the universe. There's always minus and plus, as I've always said. So you can never have an up without a down. You can have a night without day. You can never have... it's the yin and the yang of life. So when we believe that something is negative, there must be a positive. So we need to ask the questions, alternative questions to the story. And that is basically how you stop rehashing the story.
How does someone really get from thinking that I have to keep this story to stopping it, basically? Because that's really what's going to help them. Sure. If they can get out of that mindset of I need to tell my story, I need to go over it. It's almost as if I need to be in this pain still.
So once again, I would go back to the commitment. how bad do you want it to be, and at what point do you realize that this is enough? So I think it's a little bit around self-awareness, understanding that, and actually acknowledging that these thoughts are created by you, and so therefore, if they're created by you, you can uncreate them.
It's really interesting when you hear people talking about an old relationship or a relationship that has failed. They always say, he's really pushing my buttons. That is something that you hear a lot of the time. And when I was reading your book and I came across this, I just laughed because it's such a common thing. But it is really very painful. And it's something that, while we say it almost unconsciously, it's something that we should be very conscious about.
Yeah, so I love this part of the book because I think I talk about it in sort of the healing your unconscious story, which is just as important as your conscious one. So these buttons are a bit of a hole, bit of a sort of a tunnel into your unconscious mind, and the X is actually just a trigger of the pain. They're not the reason for it. We have some really big stuff around abandonment. We have really big stuff, especially as women, really big stuff around being left alone completely. So it's normal that when things like this happen, that your buttons are pushed. Now, it's an interesting one because trauma, you don't necessarily have to have massive trauma for this to be the case. You can have small traumas that happen. So, for example, Daddy comes home. Imagine this. Daddy comes home, little girl sitting there, so excited that Daddy's coming home, because he told her in the morning that he would spend some time with her. He comes home, he says hello, acknowledges her, puts down his case and leaves the room. Now what does the girl think? She may be thinking, Daddy doesn't love me. She may think men aren't trustworthy. Whatever that belief is, what happens in that moment, as children, we don't know how to deal with that. So what we do is we fragment the pain, and we create amnesia around it, and then we store it in the unconscious. Now, we keep doing this again and again and again and again, and suddenly we have all these belief systems that show up. Now, if your ex comes along and pushes a button, the chances are that it will push a button, for example, that takes you back to that moment. And it has nothing to do with him, because our belief systems create our reality. But the unconscious mind is not in our head. It's actually out in our field. Now, we are all energy. So the universe only sees pictures and feelings. Pictures and feelings. This is how the law of attraction works. And action. But ultimately, you have a feeling, there's a picture there, and you usually attract that. So you're thinking, I want this, and what happens is you get something completely different. Why? Because suddenly those pictures that you held in your field as a child are still there.
It's really important for anyone who's trying to heal to identify this. And I guess that's one of the things you help women to identify, which buttons have been left, or which feelings have been there from childhood to deal with it, so they can get over this.
So there's some really great techniques that can be used. Things like EFT, which is the emotional freedom technique, but I use matrix reimprinting, which is very similar to acupuncture without the needles. And so there are meridian points all over our body that moves the energy, because actually trauma is stored in our cellular memory. We have the pictures out here in our field, but actually the pain is stored in the cellular memory. So effectively, we've got to shift and change that cellular memory, and we can do that through energy work. So I use matrix reimprinting, which is an amazing tool, which basically gets to the reason, to the point of reference. What is that triggering for you? Where does that come from? Once they get the image, we can then go in and shift the image, shift the feelings, so that they can release it and change it.
Yeah, that's I've recently heard about that. So
really?
So I know exactly what you mean. And then just rounding up, one of the things I know this is your favorite topic in the book is the share and support. And why is this important for you?
Well, for me, it was really important because it is what got me through. When I got through my divorce in New York City, I was in a city that wasn't my own. I was really lonely and I didn't really know what to do because none of my friends were going through this. And I felt really, really lonely. My family had kind of turned their back on me, and I didn't feel like anybody who was in my network really understood. And also, I was going through all of those things, rehashing the past, buttons being triggered. I was a mess. So I wanted to find a group of people that could help me somehow. I wasn't sleeping either. So suddenly I went to a divorce meetup group in New York, and it was amazing. I started to hang out with these bunch of people who really understood what was going on for me. I had a couple of them come and make sure that I would sleep every night and look after me and then leave. And it was just amazing. So what I realized was it's the power of having a group of people that you can actually share. My sense was that there was something lacking in that group, which was the willingness to change the way that they thought, the willingness to change the way. And at the time, I didn't know about personal development. At the time, I was just doing what I could at the time. So I just thought, you know what? When I came into doing what I do, I really wanted to offer that opportunity, a space where we could come and chat, talk, but also have the personal development element in there, so that we weren't just chatting. I was also moving them forward and changing the way that transforming the way that they could see it.
Yeah. And how can people get involved with this and sort of join your online community?
They can reach me at www.divorceshift.com, or they can effectively download free chapters of my book, actually, if they want to. And they can do that at www.goodbyemrx.com. First free chapters that they can read, and then they'll be sent emails and stuff like that, and that's when they'll get the information around the groups and also our little book club that I'm running as well.
Yes, tell us about that.
So I call them Conversation Transformational Circles. What they are is a group of us meet every month, and we talk about each chapter of the book. What happens is I've carefully questioned and want to facilitate the group and talk about how that chapter affected them, what it meant to them, but it also allows them to share how it related to them, and also we talk about what they can do so that they can start moving themselves forward. So it basically means that it's an opportunity to share, learn and grow, but also I get them to answer the questions that are facilitated in a special way that allows them to get the aha moments, that allow them to get the shift and the changes that ultimately they're really looking for, so they can end up being happy again.
Well, wishing you so much success with that. That's been brilliant. If you've been listening to us on Book to Podcast, you've been listening to me chatting with Marina Pearson, the author of Goodbye, Mr. X. If you want to find out more interviews, go to www.audio-byte.co.uk. So see you next time on Book to Podcast. Bye-bye.